Hi, and welcome to part 3 of the automating Active Directory groups with PowerShell. So what we've done in the last video is we've created this function to validate the groups, which takes in our XML file and then validates whether or not the groups actually exist. What we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be adding a parameter on the validate groups called create, and this will tell the script to create the group if it doesn't exist already. And if we pass that create as false or we don't pass the create parameter, it's not going to create the groups by default. So let's go ahead and let's get started on this script here. So what I first want to do is actually just add a try catch to the whole function here, just to add some error catching. So let's just add a try at the beginning here, and then we're just going to select all this and then tab it over. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to end the try with a curly bracket, and then put our catch, and then an open and close curly bracket once again, and then do a write error dash message $ underscore dot exception dot message. And then I just like to capitalize these because these are actually supposed to be capitalized. All right, so we have everything wrapped in a try catch statement. So this will just add some validation. And then if we just run this right now, what we get right now is we have the programmers group, which comes back as it does exist, and the management group, which comes back as it does not exist. So that's how we are starting out. So let's go ahead and first just add in our parameter into the beginning params of the function. So what we're going to do, we're just going to add a comma after the server parameter, and we're going to do an open and close square bracket, do parameter, and this one is not going to be mandatory. We are actually going to set a default value for the create, and we're going to set the default value to false. This way, if you don't pass in the create parameter, it's not going to create the groups, it's just going to strictly validate. And we're going to do an open and close parentheses, and then we are going to do an open and close square bracket. It's going to be a type bool, and we're going to create it under the name create, and we're going to do equals $false to set the default value of create to false. So basically what this does is we're going to have a create. So the only time that we really need to create is when the group does not exist. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to come in here, and we're going to do if $create, then open and close curly bracket, and then we're going to have an else, open and close curly bracket. So here we are. So we have our create function there. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create the group in here. But first, what we're going to want to do is we're just going to do a write verbose again here, just to kind of give the user, if they run it with a verbose parameter, that they kind of see what's going on. So we're going to do creating group with creating group and then group name. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and create the group. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a hash table here. So we're just going to call it group data. We're going to create our hash table. So to create a hash table like we've seen in previous videos, it's just the @ symbol and then open and close curly bracket. Then we're going to have to put in all of our parameters here that we would want. So we know that we need a name, and we're going to set this to group name. We need a SAM account name, which is again going to be the group name. The description, which we're going to set this description to group created by script. And then we're going to go ahead and do group category. For us is going to be security, because we are only working with security groups here. And then our group scope is going to be global. And then the server is going to equal server here, because this is what we pass in at the top here. So this is going to be our group data. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a new AD group. And we're going to do at group data. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually wrap this new AD group in another try. Actually, we're just not going to wrap it in another try catch because we already have a try catch around the whole thing. So that should be okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set our variable AD group, and we're going to refetch the group here. So after we create it, we want to see if it's actually created, because it might have an error. So in that case, or it's not created for some reason, we want to make sure that it's actually created. And then we're going to have our if AD group again, because we want to be able to update and pass in the proper values. And we're going to have our else statement. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we update our result table properly. So just because the AD group doesn't exist at first, we should not be setting the result to exist equals false right away. Only if we are not creating the group should that happen. There we are. And then obviously if the group does not exist afterwards, and then if the group is created, then let's do true. So basically we have if the AD group exists afterwards, we're going to set the exists property to true. If it still doesn't, we're going to do exists is equal to false. If the create command is not executed and the group does not exist, then we have our exist equals false. Now, what I actually like to do in these scenarios is to add a third property. That third property, I'm going to call it just note, and that's going to tell us whether or not that group was existing before, or if it didn't exist and was created by the script, or was tried to execute and didn't exist, tried to get created, but failed to get created, or in the last case, it didn't exist and the create command didn't get ran. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a add member basically every time that we already have a add member here. So what we're going to want to do is, for me, it's going to be on line 24 here that I am starting. But basically in the first if AD group, where the group exists, where we add the add member of exists is true, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another add member here. And we're going to do input object, result entry, member type, note property, name. And for name, we're going to put note, or we can put notes because that might be a little bit more accurate. And value, we are going to say group existed. And then what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to copy this line. And what we're going to do is we're going to do, so if the group exists after being created, we are going to do group was created by script. And then what we're going to do is if the AD group still isn't there, but the script did execute the create command, group was not created error, because we know that we ran the create command, but for some reason it still is not created. Please check active directory. So this might be a situation where we might have to create the group manually, or validate the script to make sure that the script doesn't have a problem. And then in the last one here, we are going to say create command not executed. Perfect. So let's see what this gives us. So in verbose here, let's go ahead and let's run this. So we are not running the create command here. So let's see what this gives us. So we actually see that the group management does not exist, and we can actually see that the notes here, we get our group existed for programmers because the group already existed. And for management, we get that it's false and the create command was not executed. So now if we actually pass in this parameter called create, and we pass in, if we actually don't pass in anything, just pass in, so obviously without that, we can do false. So we don't actually pass in anything different. It still create command is not executed. And then if we do true and we run this, okay, so I actually spelled group scope incorrectly here. And this is why that we always do the try catch and we write the error out just to really know what's going on. So now if we go ahead and we just run this again, we get that the group was created by script. And then if I run it again, we get that the group already existed. And if we actually go in Active Directory here and we just delete both groups and we go ahead and we just remove this create here, we run it again, we see that they are both not existing, create command not executed, and we can do create true, run this again, and we get that the group was created by script, and we can see the verbose group programmers does not exist, creating group management does not exist, creating group, and we get that the group was created by script for both. And if we run it again, we see that the group already exists. So that is really the validate groups. And with that validate groups, the option to create the groups. I like to do it this way for this script anyways. I just find it a lot easier. Otherwise, you'd have to create another function past the table that you have from the validate groups. This is very, very simple. You're just adding a parameter, whether or not you want to create the groups, and you still get the output, in which case that we will be using in our next function, which will then manage the groups. So really, we only have two major functions here. We will have the validate groups and the manage groups, which will add and remove the users as sees fit by the titles that we assign to the groups. So please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you on the next video.